They didn't allow that 3 weeks to lapse because I think they were in a hurry to complete the building on time.
Let's move to Bayelsa State, where the Nigerian Army has reiterated its commitment to protecting the nation's territorial integrity and supporting the civil society. Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, said this in a message at the inauguration of projects at the 16th Brigade Camp, Elebele, Yenegua, Bayelsa State.
We would all try to shield the Nigerian Army from any blame. Nigerian Army, to me, is the most important organ that keep the cohesion of this country. They have played this role severally over the years. The most important one was during the war. It has also projected us outside the country.
The Nigerian Army has released the postings and appointments of some of its senior officers. A statement signed by the Acting Director, Army Public Relations, Colonel Sagir Musa, says the appointees include Major General H.O. Otiki, who has been posted to 8th Division as General Officer Commanding, while the General Officer Commanding 8th Division, Major General S.O. Olabanji, has been posted to Infantry Corps Center. Other senior officers posted to various Nigerian Army divisions are Brigadier General H.I. Baturi from 34 Brigade to Headquarters, Training and Doctrine Command as Director Examinations, Brigadier General T.O. Olowo Meye from Headquarters 33 Brigade as Director Civil Military Affairs, and many others. The All Progressive Congress APC has taken a position on the 6 states of Adamawa, Bauchi, Benue, Kano, Plateau, Sokoto, and Rivers states, where elections were declared inconclusive and suspended by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, after the March 9th governorship elections across the country. The party, in a statement by its National Publicity Secretary, Larry Issa Onilu, says in Benue State, it aligns itself with a report by a coalition of election observers calling on INEC to declare the candidate of the APC, Emmanuel Jime, as the winner of the governorship polls. The party says it is concerned and deeply troubled by the unfolding events in Rivers State, particularly about the desperation of the PDP governorship candidate, Governor Nyesom Wike, to remain in office, and calls on the INEC to immediately redeploy Obo Ifanga, the resident electoral commissioner in Rivers State, in order to avoid crises that may follow the organized crime allegedly being executed by Wike and Ifanga. The statement added that in Plateau, Kano, Adamawa, Bauchi, and Sokoto states, its comfortable lead is unassailable. The party therefore urged its members, supporters, and indeed the entire electorate not to be complacent, but remain focused as they prepare for the supplementary election that will give their candidates success. The Nigeria Erosion and Watershed Management Project, new map, is a success story, and more resources will be committed to it for greater achievements. This assurance is coming from the World Bank after reviewing the projects embarked upon in the past 6 years.
For new map, bringing the field to the practice manager is doable, and it has been done.
When the work is done well, it resonates everywhere. It's one of the biggest projects we have, and it is the most successful project we have.
The Lake Chad Research Institute has taken agricultural revolution to the next level in line with the present administration's resolve. Specifically, the institute has come up with improved seedlings to boost wheat farming. This was demonstrated in Hadijia, Jigawa State, during the 2019 Wheat Farmers Field Day. Nigerians have been urged to emulate the virtues of Jesus Christ and imbibe the spirits of sacrifice for the good of the nation. Against the backdrop of the just concluded general elections, the primate of the All-Nigerian Anglican Communion, Most Reverend Nicholas Oko says in order to support the present administration's drive to take the country to the next level, the need for this change in mindsets is all the more important.
There's so much talk about faith and religion, but the essence is not really very pronounced in our lives. So we cannot get tired of continuing to teach and teach the essence of sacrifice in the life of people. Any community, any household without somebody willing to make sacrifice so that others can get up, things will be very tough for them. And so it is with the nation.
While urging newly elected politicians to be alive to their responsibilities, he is confident that the renewed mandate of President Muhammadu Buhari has provided a solid platform on which to build a brighter future for Nigeria. The National Gallery of Art has unveiled documents containing works of different artists across the country. The document unveiled in Abuja is a compendium from 2 decades.
It is our expectation that this exhibition will make the works accessible to more people than we ever before. We are also offering them online to a wider public across the world.
This way, they are contributing immensely to our knowledge base in visual arts in particular, and other art forms in general.
Our culture cannot be maintained, and all the culture maintained, our values cannot be actually displayed.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kinsley and Blessing after this break.
I was a little girl. I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir. And your shirts are always so white. I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results. Shh, it's our little secret. It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
Team huddle. But we lost. Don't be tired, guys. This isn't a loss. It's a practice for winning.
Nothing makes a mother prouder than seeing her child growing up. But I know as he learns to lead, he'll face even more dirt, germs, and risk of illness.
That's why in changing seasons, you need strong Dettol protection. Because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Here you go.
Madam.
That's it. Those naira are enough.
Hi, dear. Helen! You've got so much even after spending so little.
Savings is such a necessity.
You save everywhere. But here, you lose it all.
How?
With this?
Impossible.
New Ticker Apic 10X. Even after applying up to 1 liter of your solution multiple times, you won't get the same cleaning that Apic gives you in a single round.
And the expense?
Far less compared to your 1 liter of solution. New Ticker Apic. Tough in cleaning,
tough in savings.
Son, being good at something requires strength. It requires pushing yourself. It requires putting in more. That's why the new improved Bornvita is packed with vitality and a great taste.
All right, we're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And on business news, OPEC Secretary General Mohammed Barkindo says investments required to ensure stability in the global oil market are returning after a dip, but the pace is still slow. Let's join Comfort Amodo, our correspondent, for more reports on the oil market.
Good to have you join us on Business News. Now, over the weekend, the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation said the passage of the 4 components of the Petroleum Industry Bill, which is expected to usher in a new legislation, would improve the nation's oil and gas sector. Dr. Mekanti Baru disclosed this during a special session on Africa on Foundations for New Investment Conference in Houston, United States. He says the passage of the bill would enhance the investment climate in the country and appeal to foreign investors to explore the Nigerian ultra-deep terrain, which he described as largely untested, noting that more than 41 billion barrels of crude oil and 319 trillion cubic feet of gas were yet to be undiscovered in sub-Saharan Africa. Similarly, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ibe Kachukwu, called for more foreign partnership to protect the African market.
And the whole idea is, quite frankly, to mobilize between $1 to $2 billion of resources to begin, quite frankly, to fund within Africa all the essentials that are necessary for us to do proper collaboration. Today, most African countries are siloed. Everybody does their own thing. You do your own refinery, you do your own plants, you do your own gas turbines, you do your... Everything is so siloed. But if we could just cross the Rubicon and be able to extend hands-off infrastructural relationships across Africa, build joint pipelines, like Dr. Barry said, build joint plants, build joint refineries, begin to protect the African market.
In other stories, the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON, has threatened to disengage partners that are unable to recover over 740 billion naira assets from 6,000 accounts. The managing director of the corporation, Ahmed Kuru, issued the threat at the 2019 AMCON AMPS interactive session, saying the debts have taken too long. The outsourced accounts to the AMPS constitute about 20% of 740 billion naira of the total eligible bank assets portfolio of 3.7 trillion naira. Meanwhile, the governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, has applauded the initiative of the private sectors, especially the Bankers Committee, in addressing the challenges of low credit to small and medium-scale enterprises in the country.
Through partnering with the Nigerian Incentive-Based Risk-Sharing System for Agric Lending, the NIRSAL, to establish a national microfinance bank with branches in all states and local governments of the Federation to provide low-interest rate lending to small-scale businesses in Nigeria. A further initiative by the NIRSAL with the CBN to de-risk lending to small-scale enterprises is also being fine-tuned.
And that's Business News for now. Comfort Amodu. Thanks for your time.
Okay, time now to take a look at papers for this morning.
Revere Bayer Toebe is with us on the studios this morning. Bayer, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning.
Good morning, Bayer.
Good morning, Nigeria.
I hope you had a restful weekend.
Yes, thank you very much.
Looked rested, well rested too. Okay, let's start off with the papers I have on the front page of the Daily Sun. Different stories, but leading for the Daily Sun this morning, 9th National Assembly, battle for Senate top post, hot up. Two riders to that story, Northeast, Southeast, push for presidency, and Ekweremadu, Abaribe, Nnamani may lock horns for minority leader's position. That's it. But just beside the nameplate, we have, I won't interfere in supplementary polls in Benue, Kano, others. This is coming from President Buhari.
Okay, still on political stories. The Punch has, for its lead story, runoffs. Buhari won't change results to favor you. Presidency wants APC candidates. More details about that on page 2. And there is a rider. INEC, security agencies meet Tuesday over polls. And just above the nameplate, we have other stories. Major shakeup as Army redeploys 21 generals. Find more details on page 23. Autumn APC candidate trade blame over inconclusive governor poll. That's, starting on page 25. APC rejects INEC's decisions on Rivers and Bauchi. Find more details about that on page 13. Okay, okay, Kingsley, let's take a look at what you have related to it.
Daily Independent and the New Telegraph, they also have the story on the presidency's reaction to the impending supplementary elections. Now, Daily Independent captures it this way in its lead story. Supplementary elections. We won't help you rig, presidency tells APC governors, with 4 riders to that. Asked them, that's the presidency, to work hard and earn their people's votes. And APC alleges fraud in Bauchi, Rivers, Kano, Sokoto, Adamawa, and Benue. Says PDP's Yakubu Dogara and Annex Festus Okoye are friends. And another writer says wild, unsubstantiated allegations have legal consequences. That's Okoye's reaction. Okoye, of course, is a member of, is a commissioner on INEC. Details of that story can be found on page 4. Still on politics, the second lead story on the front page of the Independent, below the photograph, says why we've not allowed Atiku inspect election materials. That's according to INEC. Why we've not allowed Atiku inspect election materials. Also there, it said no nation grows with rigged elections. That's according to Peter Obi, who was vice presidential candidate in the presidential election that took place last month. That's on page 41 in greater detail. Let me take other stories. CUPP condemns EFCC and police raid over raid on Ononge's farm. That's on page 41. And gunmen abduct traditional ruler in Edo. That's page 5. And above the nameplate, it says federal government yet to remove VAT in air transport 9 months after decision. That can be found on page 4. Benga Daniel makes U-turn, agrees not to join APC. That's page 5. With the rider, news that I have left PDP and quit politics, fake. That's according to former President Goodluck Jonathan. Now, that story on Benga Daniel, that Daily Independent is reporting, as I said a while ago, Benga Daniel makes U-turn, agrees not to join APC. But come to the front page of New Telegraph. New Telegraph, below the nameplate of New Telegraph, what we are reading there is Benga Daniel makes U-turn, set to join APC. Details can be found on page 6. So one is saying that he's making a U-turn not to join APC. Another is saying that he's making a U-turn to join APC.
Maybe the other one should be a roundabout. Huh?
A roundabout. There was one musician, they called him Father U-turn or so. If you, I don't know what any political U-turn.
But actually, this story broke after he announced that he's retiring from politics. Yes. And therefore, he was no longer going to participate in politics. And he summoned his party supporters to brief them. And they said, okay, we are not agreeing to the fact that you are retiring from politics. You can continue to be there, but you now have to lead us to another party. And when they asked him, he said, well, you have the people. I am their leader. And you heard what they have said. With time, we will take a decision on what they have suggested. And he was lending credence to the voice of the people. That is why you have the speculations about whether he wants to jump ship or he's not jumping ship. But it's quite strange because a week ago or 4 days ago, he was the Director General of the campaign for Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. So, you know, politics in Nigeria is very strange.
Pretty strange, Bayo.
Yes.
Very strange,
Now,
Bayo. So let's take the stories here.
The others are about election results. The governorship and state assembly election suspended in Rivers State is to be concluded by INEC. The investigation by the Independent National Electoral Commission, the fact-finding team found that polling unit results are safe and intact, and therefore returns will be made for 21 constituencies. Returns were made for 21 constituencies. Area where voting could not take place were of two factors. One, armed gangs disrupted it. The other, some soldiers took over some collating centers. INEC is to engage the army about their role in this. The Nigerian army has indicated it is going to investigate the alleged role of some of its men and officers. Meanwhile, INEC has directed a return to conclude elections in Rivers State. Meanwhile, supplementary elections are to be held in Benue, Adamawa, Plateau, Kano, and Sokoto on 23rd March. However, when it comes to Bauchi, INEC has called off the supplementary election for governorship election for Bauchi State. Rather, it has approved a resumption, a conclusion, and announcement of Tafawa Balewa State constituency results. Results of the governorship and State House of Assembly for 13 registration areas in Tafawa Balewa constituency were disrupted by armed gangs. 7 of them were for governorship and 6 were for State House of Assembly. Those were the ones that were affected. But from the report submitted by the resident electoral commissioner, INEC has approved a resumption, conclusion, and announcement of Tafawa Balewa result. But this has attracted reactions and condemnation by both the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressive Congress. At separate prayer conferences in Bauchi, the PDP and the APC both traded blames and also blame INEC. The PDP state chairman, Alhaji Hamza Akuyam, says that the state returning officer lacked the competence to cancel the election duly completed and validly collated. The APC chairman also, Alhaji Uba Nana, he also says that the PDP engineered the crisis that led to the cancellation of the inconclusive elections. The party contended that the position taken by the Independent National Electoral Commission calling off the supplementary election contravenes the law. It says that the National Constitution, INEC guidelines, as well as the Electoral Act cannot stipulate that INEC cannot on its own reverse any decision of a collation officer or by a returning officer. Such can be reversed only by a court of law. INEC cannot approbate and reprobate. So the legal arguments are going on, but INEC has taken this decision. This week we are in, it is hoped that the elections in Rivers will be concluded, and that of Tafawa Balewa, that is holding that of Bauchi, will also be concluded and announced.
Okay, Bayo, thanks a lot. Just let's just take this story right at the foot of the front page of New Telegraph. There's a second list story, New Telegraph. Below the photograph there, it says 2019 polls. 12 out of 91 political parties win elective positions. With 2 riders, clean sweep for APC in 8 states. PDP clears all seats in Ebonyi and Enugu. Details can be found on pages 6 and 9. Now, this story is important to the extent that, of course, it provides a gauge, a fair gauge, all other things being equal, for the parties that will survive after the general elections on account of the amendment to the Constitution that now empowers INEC to deregister political parties. That story is also there on the front page of the Nigerian Pilot. And Bayo, just before you comment, I think it's important to make this conceptual clarification. One of the papers was talking about a runoff election. We don't have any runoff election just yet for the 2019 cycle of general elections. What we are having are supplementary elections or make-good elections. In other words, those locations where you had crisis and then the elections could not be concluded. INEC, of course, is planning to conclude those elections this weekend, that's on the 23rd. And thereafter, a formal declaration and return will be made, assuming there is a clear winner. It is when there is no clear winner on the first ballot that you now have a runoff between the 2 leading candidates. But the supplementary election where we're having this weekend will involve all the parties that, of course, signed up to contest the particular election in the areas where the make-good elections will be taking place. Okay, very quickly.
Good for that clarification. Thank you, Kingsley.
Okay, quickly, you have other stories?
Yes, I have some other stories at the foot of Daily Sun. Sokoto Arawa youth denied, others won INEC. Why they won in INEC? Find out about details about that on page 42. And I think this one was in one of Kingsley's papers. No nation can grow with election rigging. Then I've neither quit politics nor dumped PDP. This is coming from former President Goodluck Jonathan. at least another area of concern for those residents here in Angwa Tomato, that's Goraka town in Tafa local government area of Niger State. They're protesting a cut of their electricity supply by the Abuja Electricity Distribution Company since May 2018.
Okay, very quickly, Nigerian pilot. Nigerian pilot has some of the stories, but let's go through the others that they have on the front page. Below the nameplate, Falana urges INEC to delist some of the 81 political parties. We have 91 political parties, it will be some of the 91 political parties. Now, Rivers PDP accepts INEC decision on polls and berates NA, that's Nigerian Army, and Federal SARS. This story says, EFCC places Okorocha, Ajimobi, and Amosu under watch, sets up crack team to monitor last-minute spendings, and CBN places commercial banks on red alert. Then you have other stories there by way of riders. Now, below the photograph showing the Vice President and some of the APC Youth Volunteer Support Group, you have a headline, Oshibanjo insists trader money not used to buy votes. That's on page 9. And they also have right at the window of the headlines at the foot of the front page, I have no reason to quit politics, or PDP for now, former President Goodluck Jonathan. Nigerian Army bows to pressure, inaugurates investigative committee on election interference, and Buhari condemns consistent killings in Kaduna.
Yes.
Bayo.
Talking about the killing in Kaduna, there are indications that the crisis in Kaduna may be coming to an end. This is a sequel to the fact that some communities there have met. An emergency meeting was held by stakeholders involving the Adara, Hausa, Fulani, and other ethnic groups. They resolved to set up what they describe as a Truth and Reconciliation Committee. This will receive memoranda from all ethnic groups. The meeting was attended by prominent persons among the former local government chairman, former commissioner from the area, the emir of Kajuru, the district head of Kufana and Kajuru. Others are religious leaders and the traditional associations, tribal associations, as well as youth groups. The idea is that they also want members of the security to be part of the meeting. They hope that with the Truth and Reconciliation, that crisis will be put behind them. The papers are speculating about who will be the leaders in the ninth National Assembly. Leadership reports that apart from identifiable ranking senators, former governors who are also ranking senators are also resolved that they want to have one of their own. Presently, the paper is speculating that a former Senate leader and a current Senate leader are front runners. However, there are also former governors of Nasarawa and former governor of Gombe who are also front runners. And they are speculating that by the time the night assembly resumes on 10th of June this year, 15 former governors will be in the Senate. And they have resolved that, irrespective of party affiliation and ranking, they will rally around one of their own. It is believed that the current Senate leadership is channeling and rooting for that new dispensation. In the House of Representatives, it is a contest between Southwest and North Central for the speakership position. Some honorable members from the Northwest are also angling for the same position. Talking about crisis, you recall that gunmen attacked a police station in Afuze and killed the DPO and 3 policemen. The Commissioner of Police for Edo State, Mohammed Damalam, is to hold a press conference today. Some of the persons who are alleged to have been involved in the killing have been apprehended, and they will be presented to the public today.
Yeah, that story is to be found at page 37 of the New Telegraph newspaper. We're just talking about that. It says police arrest suspected Edo Police Division's attackers. But the statement, of course, wasn't issued by the police. It was issued by the Special Advisor on Media and Communication to the Edo, on the communication strategy to the Edo State Governor. Yes. So, but there will be a follow-up, obviously. I mean, if there are
actually, immediately it happened, the governor had challenged the Edo State Police Command to be on the trail of the killers and fish them out. And so the state government is championing and supporting the police to make sure that those criminals are brought to book. Similarly, on Friday, a gunman, 28-year-old man, attacked a mosque, 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. Some 49 persons were killed. Pope Francis is ahead of citizens around the world that have condemned it as a senseless act. The President of the U.S., Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and Canada have all condemned it. In fact, the condemnation is coming from the Afghan President, Ashraf Ghani, says that this attack reaffirms that terrorism has no religion or race, and therefore it is an evil phenomenon against the whole of mankind. A 28-year-old guy in court today.
Yeah, it's already been apprehended. I mean, perhaps the most horrific aspect of it was that he was streaming the attack live. It was a live recording. It was a live recording. So you ask yourself, where is the world headed? You know, Bayo, just before Blessing comes in with the editorial, there's an obituary, and it's at page 35 of the New Telegraph. It says, Reps member-elect dies in Kano. You remember there was a loss in Plateau. Now, this one is from Kano, and it says an APC House of Reps member-elect, Garba Mohammed Putalawa, representing Kura Madobi and Garun Malam in Kano. He passed away after a brief illness.
Oh, sad.
So, what happened?
That's a by-election.
A by-election.
That's right.
Okay, for the editorial, we're taking it from Al Jazeera newspaper. One building collapse, too many avoidable tragedies. For many factors have been adduced to the incessant building collapse, a situation that has continued to attract the concern of professionals in the sector. Architect, builders, town planners, civil engineers, amongst others, have continued to raise many concerns. Bayo.
Yes, just 72 hours after we were all lamenting about the collapsed two-story building in Lagos, another collapse in Ibadan on Friday. Thanks to Providence, I think so far there's no death recorded, but several persons were injured in that two-story building at the collapse. And so the editorial is centered
that's the one in Ibadan.
In Ibadan. The one in Lagos, of course, claimed 20 lives, including school children.
Exactly.
And the injured were about 49. And that if you go back just only last year, there were several instances of collapsed building in Lagos, even in Abuja here. And therefore, the editorial is happening on the fact that the factors responsible for them are usage of quacks, on the one hand, and another, usage of substandard materials. Also blame town planners and also for not enforcing the law. Similarly, you see that when our cities develop, you see houses springing up like mushroom. Most of the time, there are no streets, there are no utility facilities. Usually, everywhere, the infrastructure comes down first before plots are even allocated before structures come up. But in our own case, the reverse is the case. So much so that immediately these structures are developed, the place already becomes a slum. And something has to be done. And so the editorial is happening on the fact that the laws that guide building by all the professionals, architects, town planners, must be enforced. And also, particularly, is lamenting that the immediate reaction of Lagos state government, particularly as at Saturday, about 80 structures have been pulled down. And there are about 1,000 structures that have been identified as substandard and have failed integrity tests and are to be demolished.
So the editorial is saying we always have to wait until one calamity before...
They are just a facade. And they are blaming that the government, particularly the agents who are there, are actually pilfering from the landowners, and that is why the structures has continued to...
All right, good thing that the Lagos state government has swung into action, pull down those buildings that have failed integrity tests, and then let the owners think of how they will, rebuild their property. They should be lucky that the government has not compulsorily acquired the land. Yes. That's prime location, by the way. Bayo Atoyebe, thank you for being with us. See you tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We're taking a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be dealing with the political class and the future of Nigeria's democracy.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily in unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilets, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's One Cap Full for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Introducing Dettol Antiseptic Liquid in Sachet for only 40 naira.
Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
Getting around heartburn and indigestion can be tricky if you eat too much. Eat food that is too spicy or greasy, or lie down after eating. Heartburn and indigestion could always be around the corner. When they come, be prepared with Gaviscon Double Action. It works within 3 minutes and lasts up to 8 hours. Gaviscon Double Action. Many causes, one solution.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Thomas Dabaden and Ishak Modibo Kawu. Now, this edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space and evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency, calls them TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Helen! Hey, where's your mom?
Today is her toilet day.
What? Helen! Toilet day? Tomorrow you're hosting a party and it's a matter of my reputation.
Even if you spend your entire day cleaning with all this, it still won't be party ready.
Impossible!
Challenge? New Ticker Harpic 10X. Even if you use this solution 10 times, it won't give you the same cleaning like Harpic because its new Ticker formulation sticks to the bowl better, giving you a sparkling clean toilet.
Wow!
New Harpic 10X
gives me the freedom from toilet day.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. Now, as a prompt for our conversation this morning, we're taking a look at the political class and the impact on the nation's democracy. Well, the future, if you want to say, ask me. Let's get Aisha Ubali to give us his background report.
The wide acceptance of democracy as government of the people, by the people, for the people, has made it the most preferred system of government globally. With Nigeria's 20-year experience of democracy in the Fourth Republic, expectations have been high that the country's democracy will grow stronger from its nascent level. From an initial two-party system in 1993, there are now over 90 political parties opening the political space for more political actors. It has, however, been a Herculean task to get political actors to play by laid-down rules, as violence is still prevalent in Nigeria's elections, mostly incited by political actors who seek to win at all costs. With reference to the 2019 general elections, issues of vote buying, ballot box snatching, use of security agents to cause trouble, and recruitment of thugs to incite violence and cause cancellation of results were recorded in some states. Some of these infractions, as confirmed by observers and the electoral umpire, not only disfranchise citizens, but threaten democracy. Going forward, how can these excesses be checked? Can politicking in Nigeria be decent and without violence? What roles can the political class play to strengthen democracy in Nigeria? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will provide answers shortly.
All right, thank you very much, Aisha Ubali, for that background. Now, joining us here in the Abuja studios to discuss this issue in further detail, we would like to welcome two survivors of the general elections. First, we'd like to welcome Senator Sabi Abdullahi, who is the chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Publicity. Distinguished Senator, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, and we also have with us here in the studios Honorable Abdul Razak Namdas, who is the chair of the House Committee on Media and Publicity as well. Honorable Namdas, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure that if you recall, there was a song that was waxed in the early 70s after the war. It was called Happy Survival. So, gentlemen, congratulations on your re-election to be members of the 9th National Assembly. All right. Also with us in the studios is where he was a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria until we loaned him for national service, a professor of political science, Professor Sam Ego. Professor Sam Ego, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you, Kingsley.
Okay. And joining us from our Kaduna Network studios is, of course, another professor of political science and a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. We've also loaned him, in the meantime, for national service in the Kaduna Annex. That's Professor Kabir Mato. Professor Mato, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Very much, and good morning.
All right.
Your rich bank. Keep loaning.
All right, okay, let's kick off. Yes. Okay. Now let's put it this way. Last week, upon the resumption of plenary by the National Assembly, both chambers, the primary discussion, it would appear, had to do with the outcome of the general elections. Even though aspects of the elections are yet to be concluded, but most of the results are in, and there was quite some heated debate on the floor of both chambers. But let's begin with Senator Sabi Abdullahi. Our focus this morning has to do with the political class and the future of Nigeria's democracy. What, in your opinion, was the conduct of the political class in the general elections about to be concluded, hopefully, this weekend?
Well, thank you, Kingsley, and bless you for having me on this very timely program. I think, for me, I see it as a mixed bag. Because in every setting, of course, you are bound to have the good, the bad, and the ugly. And to me, this is not an exception. Now, but I think I would like to put some context here. That it is often said that whatever you see happening cannot be divorced from the setting, the environment itself. And the political class are a product of their own society. And in many instances, while the blame is pinned on the political class or the politicians, as the case may be, it is also very obvious that the environment in which they operate cannot also be free from most of the things we see as infraction. And I think in the case of the 2019 election, what you will see perhaps should be dissected from the specific rather than the general. Because if we generalized, we tend to mask the tendencies that prevail in some of the political environment or setting or states. And so for me, what I've seen is, for example, I'm from Niger North, and as far as I'm concerned, our election was very peaceful. To the extent my dad told me, he said he has seen, my dad is over 90, he said this is the most peaceful election he has seen in our environment. So I think if you look at it against the background of the crisis that pervades some other, states or even senatorial districts, for example, then you can understand the points I'm trying to make. So I think beyond the aspect of saying the political class, maybe it is time for the political scientists. Unfortunately, we have Prof here and the other Prof in Kaduna. It is time for us to now begin to look at specifics, to begin to understand why it is peaceful in some domain or senatorial districts or constituency against some others, and to even go back in time. Let's look at the time series. At least we've had 1999, we've had 2003, we have 2007, we have 2011, we have 2015. That is 5 elections spanning all this number of years. I think it is time for the political scientists to go back and look at these very specifics and to see, is it a recurrent decimal in some very, in some constituencies, that when election comes, it is war, it is do or die. And what has been the picture? And then where we are having clean, peaceful elections, to also know why are they peaceful? And the ones that are violent, why are they violent? I think until we begin to do that, we may just continuously be punching the air, looking for answers where there are none. And I think in these particular instances, for example, in 2019, it is not different from what has happened in the past. Some people will tell you it was very peaceful, like I've just given you an insight, and some other places, it was war.
Honorable Nandas.
Thank you so much. For me, I share his thoughts with some kind of amendments. Actually, the political class we have, to some extent, we need to be blamed. Was this idea of people feeling that, look, I must win election at all costs. We know that elections, you must either win or lose. You have to have a spirit of sportsmanship. Agreed, you cannot work in isolation. As he said, you are a product of a given society. And the behavior of some of these people also affects you as a person. But again, because you are the one seeking election, and sometimes you find politicians trying to use certain traits. For example, it is wrong to see people manipulating religion, manipulating ethnicity to their advantage. You may not be very religious, but when it comes to a political period, you become to look more like a sheikh or like a pastor. And after the election, probably you hardly see them in some of these worship places. So, why manipulate the people using religion? Why manipulate? And because this religion and ethnicity is a little bit sensitive. And people hardly settle down to listen. And any little thing that affects a particular individual, you find out that people begin to overreact. And in some cases, it causes crisis. And you even find in certain worship places, specimen of sample ballot papers are taken to worship houses to even educate the worshippers, look, vote this way. I think these are things that should be avoided. We are growing, and therefore we should avoid doing this I must win at all costs. Because the point again is that even if you win against the wishes of the people, to come on and then be their leader becomes a problem. To even drive freely within the society becomes a problem. So that's why we have cases of people based on all this should happen. But again, finally, is the people who manage elections. For example, the INEC, they should be seen to be very transparent. If you picked a university professor who has kicked vehemently against the idea of exam malpractice, but you are being told that he is the one that has changed result sheets and that he has allegedly been part of a scam, you begin to wonder, where are we? Are we actually maturing or are we going backward? So once there is a credible election and the process is good, one, there will be no tribunal, the less issues of tribunal cases, and that will be peace. I hope it's a mixed bag. I hope that we overcome this with time.
All right. Professor Samego, well, it's been said that ours is a resilient journey to democratic practice. And if students of political science and professors like you who want to see this journey in different lights, the outcome of 2019 general elections, as we want to set the agenda, is something of great concern to people, especially members of the public, or the political gladiators, or whoever. How do you rate the conduct of this recent election against the backdrop of what we've been attempting to practice since 1999?
Thank you very much. What I want to do this morning is to begin by querying the idea of a political class. And I think we need to interrogate what that means. And you need to then understand when you talk of a class, what are you referring to? I don't want to go into theories of stratification in sociology or Marxist theory of class, but there are three important issues when we are talking about class category. One, we are talking about a group of people that share a common interest, and this interest is more or less defined. Secondly, we are talking about a group of people who are conscious of that interest. Not only do they have a common interest, they are very conscious of that interest. And number three, they will engage in a collective action to advance that interest. Now, if you look at these three parameters for understanding the idea of a class, I think it's obvious that the mischief we are trying to deal with here is the fact that you have a group of people whose permanent or whose attention is to seek power. But in seeking power, they hardly adhere to the rule of the game. They don't adhere to the Constitution. They don't even obey their own Constitution, and they do not even obey the rules set by the umpire. So I think this is a mischief that we are trying to deal with. And I think the Honorable from Adamawa is very clear. You know, when he talks about the structure of society and the fact, for example, that certain politicians deliberately appeal to ethnic and religious identity, not because they are religious or not because they are advancing the interests of the ethnic group, but because they are mobilizing support and voters, and therefore set society on a path of division, you know, and then create crisis. You know, that has been said. He also alluded to the role of the umpire, for example, where there is no confidence on the part of actors that the umpire is actually above board, you know, and of course, there's the desperation of people resorting to self-help, you know, and the fear of losing, you know, we all find this. And part of what I also kept saying, looking at the election we've had in 2019, going to the future, I think we must think of moderating our politics by changing our electoral system a little, away from a very competitive system to one that is accommodative of losers, you know. And I'm talking about what Justice Uwe's committee said about the need for this country to try some element of proportional representation, you know, because if you look at, for example, some state assemblies, you know, one party winning 60%, another party winning 40% of the vote. In the end, everybody in that house comes from the same party, while the party winning 40 has no representation. So if you are having a proportional representation system in which you are sharing votes according to percentage won by parties, you are likely going to have diversity in that house. So I think we need to tone down the element of competition in our politics, you know, so that it's not just all the time winner takes all, so that losers can go home with some consolation prize. I mean, this is something we need to really think about, you know, because that fear of losing and the desperation to win at all costs is at the root of the kind of crisis that we are discussing here.
Professor Sam Ego, thank you very much. Proportional representation, I'm sure you have always raised that matter on Good Morning Nigeria when we've had you as a guest. And it's something that I'm also passionate about. I've been once written about this, you know, over the decades. It was interesting that the late President Yaradua had actually given that as one of the terms of reference for the Ways Committee after the 2007 elections. It also came up at the 2014 political conference, but not much was done about it. We'll come back to that issue of the nature of our electoral system and the zero-sum game that it produces at the moment. But Professor Kabiru Mato, the floor is yours. Tell us something about what you think about Nigeria's political class and the future of our democracy on the basis of the performance of the class at the 2019 general elections.
I think that the Nigerian political class, you know, is typical, you know, of what you find virtually in any other political environment. The Nigerian political class perhaps will have certain peculiarities arising from the environment that we find ourselves, and perhaps also the objective which the politician desires to achieve by participating in the enterprises of politics. Aside from that, I think one of the most important things that we need to really put into consideration here is, you know, what really are the objectives of or what centrally is the objective of the Nigerian political elite, or what you call the political class. First of all, in the decision to participate in politics is simply because the politician desires to contest an election and gain access to state resources and its paraphernalia, or does the Nigerian political elite actually see politics as an avenue of service? Now, depending on which side of the pendulum any political actor belongs. The purpose and focus of politics, in my view, will strictly be determined by any of these angles. So one of the major issues, I think, that bedevil the Nigerian political scenery these days is the seeming focus by the political elite to see the struggle for control of power or access to power in order to be able to fulfill certain personal aspirations against, service to the people, service to the community. Now, this, in my view, is one fundamental reason why you see politics being taken as a matter of life and death. It's a cutthroat competition. You put up all the resources that is at your disposal, and you even borrow. Some of them will go to bank to secure credit, or many other places in order to inject into the political project, with the hope that if victory is certainly achieved, then you begin to reap from state resources, and at the end of the day, So as long as the political class sees politics not as an avenue of service, but rather as an enterprise of making huge investment, so that such investment will be recouped at the end of the day when victory is secured, this very hostile environment that we have will continue to future and predominate as the political direction of the Nigerian society. And again, this brings me to the issue that Professor Sam Egu is talking about. That's the issue of reducing the tension and the crisis that we normally get whenever it is time for elections. The winner taking everything, to me, does not seem to, yes, is an idea, of the Western liberal contraption. But if democracy is about specifying the peculiarities of environment in order to suit, the realities of the citizenry, then I think it's time for Nigeria to begin to think of how we can, not pacify. I would like to use the word pacify those who are losers in an election, but a scenario where the political system becomes more inclusive to the extent that the winner will not, take away everything, leaving the loser with nothing. This, in my view, more than any other thing, speaks volume about the heated nature of electoral contest in this country, and therefore continues to fragment the society, and at the end of the day, denying the nation and the polity of the opportunity that exists, to have a very virile democracy and elected leaders and representatives that will be in the interest of the people and the nation, at large. So we must really have a redefinition of what are the objectives and what is the focus of the Nigerian political elite itself, for us to be able to really understand and maybe put up. We've had so many conferences and seminars and, talking about these issues, but I think it's time that we really give it a more serious, practical thoughts and approach in order to be able to reduce this very glaring, unfortunate tendencies that we see emerging after every election.
All right, Professor Kabir Mato, still with you. At the dawn of the new Nigeria in 1960, when at least the foremost nationalists actually moved for independence and those other attendant issues to see to a new nation with so much wealth, mineral wealth, the resources, the people, there were some shared interests. I'm going to read something to you. It said Africans, that this new nation will set a new pattern for new African nations, providing a model of economic, political, and social development which other nations could emulate. Now, going by the criteria or the checklist Professor Sam Egu gave here, a group of people sharing defined interest who are conscious, who also engage in collective action to achieve. How has the political class, whether from the 1960s till date, how have we been able to turn around the fortunes of the people to actually leverage on all those things that we ought to have given the masses, that leverage of things that could actually build the nation till this moment?
That's precisely what I'm saying. There is a huge gap between the focus, the objectives of the political establishment during colonial struggles and after independence with the objectives of the contemporary Nigerian political class. In those days, the issue, well, during colonial struggle, the focus of the Nigerian political class was basically to seize power and push colonial masters outside of the realm of politics within the Nigerian nation. That was an objective. Immediately after independence, the major focus was to try to see that, certain pattern of development occurred on the basis of the various regions that existed in this country and at the center. So politics at that time was really geared towards the attainment of the objective of the society and the polity as a whole. Now, this is not the objective of the Nigerian political class today. The major objective of the Nigerian political class today is to secure political office so that certain, personal, in most cases, certain personal dividends, accrue to the various, individual people in governance. And this is this speaks volume about the nature of very unfortunate corrupt practices that you see happening, at various levels of government in this country. So it speaks about one thing, that is the objective of the Nigerian political class today should also refocus on the need to serve the people as against securing political positions simply to advance and propel some personal, advantages. And if this clearly, shows what difference. Now, of course, you will see that arguing from a historical perspective, one may wish to, put as a matter of fact that in the early days of independence and until 1960, in 1966, when the first military coup was staged in this country, the political class was more focused, had more objectives that were people-oriented than the subsequent. In 1979, for instance, to 1983, despite the level of, corruption allegations leveled against the government of that or the governments during that particular republic, you will find that the focus were more on the Nigerian people and the Nigerian nation than what we subsequently have. And I think the politicians of these days must have to really refocus what objectives or the reason behind participating in politics in the first place for us to be able to reduce this unnecessary tension and crisis that we see happening all over the place. So I think it's a matter of focus. It's a matter of what agenda one is setting. And it has become an integral part of the entire political system to the extent that people now go into politics without really having a proper grasp of what are the objectives. It's simply getting elected into a particular representation or getting elected into a particular political office for not necessarily service to humanity, not necessarily service to your constituents or to the people. And I think until and unless we're able to change this narrative, we will continue to face all these major upheavals that we see where in some states of this country, it's become difficult to conduct elections. Now, let me give you an example. There, out of about 6 or 7 states where rerun was to take place in this, coming weekend, about 5 or 6 of them are the northern part of this country. But I'm not sure if in any of these places there was any loss of life. There was, of course, concerted political tension on the part of the contending individuals and groups wanting, to be declared as winners in their respective constituencies. But what we see happening in places like Rivers State, where election itself could not even take place, simply because the major political actors have seen violence as the means of achieving their desired objectives, in my view, speaks volume about, the unpreparedness, if you may call it, of certain segments of the Nigerian political establishment to even try to play politics the way it should be. So the essence is, of course, that it's in Nigeria that we have this balance. Politicians will always say whatever happens during the election, regardless of the flows within the electoral process, all that they desire is for them to be declared, and then when they are declared as winners, the other people, the other parties should go to court. And This again contributes very negatively and dangerously to what Honorable Namdas was saying about the compromise that certain people of very high intellectual repute, professors also.
All right, Professor Kabir Mato, we will return to you in the course of this conversation. Now back to the guests here with us in the Abuja studios. Coming to Senator Sabe Abdullahi, the caveat you entered is noted with regard to the fact that, look, we should be wary of making generalized statements as to the conduct of members of the political class in the 2019 elections. Perhaps, yes, that has to do with the incidents of violence. But there were also reports, probably widespread, of vote buying, whether violence or vote buying, or compromise of attempts to compromise electoral officials, all of which was intended, to subvert the will of the voters. But there is an issue on the table which the two professors of political science have touched on, and that has to do with the interests and the desire to achieve that interest. Can we, you gentlemen here from the Senate and from the House, use you as a point of contact to try to examine the mind of the political class? What is the interest that the political class has in its mind? And how does it seek to achieve that particular interest through the electoral process? First, Senator Abdullahi.
Well, thank you very much. I think earlier when I said context, I'm happy the three other guests have actually gone into that context in proper perspective. And based on what you are saying, I think if you look at individual politicians, you will get different answers. If I look at my case, for example, I was asked to come and, contest in terms of service to my people. And I know one challenge I faced was the fact that I came with an agenda that I want to see happening based on things that should change. And I was approached by many people, including my colleagues, who would tell you, if you are going to play politics that way, then you are not going to go far. Why are they saying so? Because the response you will get from the people itself is the key determinant. A situation where you are able to deliver dividends of democracy, as it is called, or you are able to profile one or two services that affects your constituents. But when it comes to the real politics of saying, oh, who should be, all those things are discountenance. Then you can imagine the scale at which people are beginning to look at these things. And I know if you take different politicians, you are bound to see this. Because the key decision that makes politicians to become, either candidates and finally to become those who win elections, definitely from my own perspective, what I have seen, I think it's a mixed bag when you come to see different communities. Some places they will tell you, all we want is do this service to us. And the moment you do that, they will tell you, don't even come for campaign. Because you've earned our trust. But some, despite what politicians will do in terms of this same service delivery, which is what they are elected to do, they will tell you there are other considerations. And in many instances, it has to do with money. So these are the challenges that many of us have seen in the field. And when you are too gentlemanly, as they put it, they will tell you you are not ready to be a politician. And I think that brings me to mind what one old politician said, that he was asking somebody, can you lie and then swear with the Quran and Bible that it is true? The person said he can't do it. He said, can you remove your clothes and fight in the market? He said he can't do it. And then he said, then you're not ready to be a politician. So I think these narratives, when you look at it, are the things the political professors are talking about. And so for me, I'm looking at the two sides, because there are two sides to every issue. Where you have a model that people appreciate that you are a good representative, you are able to actually defend their cause, you are able to present their problems in parliament, and you are able to actually pursue course of action that will bring about change in your community. Where that is appreciated, then good politics is happening. But where it is said that, I will tell you an example. A boy who is not up to 17 years old came to my front and said, Oga, we know you are trying. You have worked here, you have worked here, you have worked there. But what people are saying is you are not giving money. And so I looked at this boy. I said, you are not even in secondary school. And this is the way you are thinking. Is this what you want us to continue to do? So, and if you ask every politician, these are the challenges you will see out there in the field. And that's why I was saying earlier that we cannot divorce whatever the politician is and what the society is actually propping up for him. And so until we begin to look at all of these nuances, I don't think we'll get it right. The debate will just continue on and on because different environment reacts to different things within the context of this our political system. And finally, let me say that I think the democracy is growing. It is growing because...
With the bloodbath that...
Yeah, it is growing because the bloodbath is in certain locations. And I think we need to also begin to see life is precious. But at least in some other elections, you will see that lives are lost in more than 10 states. We should begin to ask, how many states did we have life being lost? So that if the number of states is reducing, then we should continue to work towards those states where bloodbath is still taking place and do the needful, even if it is through social engineering. Like I've said sometimes in this same program where I said off election, most of the agencies that should work on voter education and political enlightenment have gone to sleep. And I think National Orientation Agency, to my mind, comes here, very clearly. So if we look at all of these things, then we can begin to get it right because there is no one size fit all. That is what I have seen in the field.
All right, Senator, thank you very much. Honorable Abdulrazak Namdas, now getting into the mind of the politician and therefore of the political class, what are your interests? And why does it appear to be the case that there's a high level of desperation in what is called now the political enterprise or political industry?
I thank you so much, Gisli. I think I want to agree with him on several issues. Number one, as a politician, as a young man, I want to serve my country. I have ages on my side because after this, I'm expecting to serve in another capacity, so I should be seen to serve very well. But the problem we are facing, as he said, is that the people you are serving, not all of them believe that, look, we want service. No matter what you attract from the federal government to the constituency, in terms of infrastructure, that you expect to get some accolades, you expect people to say you have tried. At the end of the day, when election comes and you don't give money, certainly you are out of it. And you find somebody who has not been in the system, who is probably outside the country, who has been outside the constituency for several years, but he has been able to gather his resources. By the time people hear that, oh, Social Party is distributing several cars and several vehicles, you will realize that nobody will even come to your place. And that is a serious challenge. And I think, as he said, we have institutions that are charged with educating people. In those good years, we used to have MAMSA. And MAMSA was a very, very great agency that was educating the people. So if the national agency at the moment can do what MAMSA did in the past, educating Nigerians and politicians, you find out that things will change. And I'm even very happy that to some extent, even the electors are a little bit sophisticated. So if people are educated, they will get to know. Let me give an example. You find in a state, I don't want to mention, but you'll get to know. You find in a state in election A, voting for this party. 2 weeks later, they have the capacity to identify, look, I will not vote for this party, I'll vote for that party. Again, in the past, we used to have a challenge of, look, people don't understand logos. Our illiterate parents will probably invalid votes. But today, people can understand that, look, even the major political parties, somebody who is very popular and has decided to find himself in an unpopular party, you still find the constituents so meticulous enough to even vote for that particular person. So there is some kind of progress in time we are recording. The only thing is that we have not cashed on it. The agencies of government have not cashed on this progress to try to enlighten the people more. And again, I don't have this idea of having several political parties being registered. You find some ballot papers, their height is also the same with me. Even as educated as you are, before you spread it down to identify a political party, and some of the logo are to some extent, you see, similar, just few changes. And it makes things too difficult. And we are lawmakers, but we will look at it, and we hope that Nigerians will give us the advantage to say, look, why must we be having this retinue of political parties, and when you come to making choices, you have issues. But I think we have made some progress somewhere. But I think it is not only us. I think even the electors have an issue. Once you demand service from the person you sent to represent you, certainly he will do much better.
All right, Honorable Abdulrazak Namdas, thank you very much. Now, we understand that our guest at the Benin Network Center is ready, and we would like to introduce him this time and bring him into the conversation. Mr. Tony Abolo, veteran journalist and public affairs analyst. Mr. Abolo, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. And straight to your contribution, we're discussing the Nigerian political class and the future of our democracy against the background of some of the unsavory reports about the 2019 general elections, which would hopefully be concluded this coming weekend. Are you hopeful about Nigeria's political class?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and to add one's voice to this post-2019 elections examination. But I think, having listened to everyone, I think there are two important things we must begin to understand in analyzing what has happened. One, is it really correct to talk about a Nigerian political class? I am not too sure yet, because we're using either a European or Western understanding of a political class to begin to analyze what the Nigerian political class is, until we begin to drive for national unity. Then that becomes the substratum under which we begin to push everyone to think as a class, because one of our guests here did talk about focus. When we have a national consciousness, a national unity drive, then you now begin to have a national political class that has a focus, that has an agenda, and that will now begin to implement the kind of democratic experience we are wanting to have in Nigeria. And secondly, and quite importantly, don't ever forget that we had too many years of military governance, and that is playing into a kind of political behavior. And until that begins to die down, and I don't know when, then we cannot begin to look at the kind of quality democratic practice that we are equally hoping for. And I'm glad someone like Lieutenant General Dambazau, who is the Minister of Interior, actually the paper he did for his doctoral work is quite seminal when he talks about the military in retreat, the rumpus of the military. And what was the rumpus? That is, what they left in the polity was agberus and touts. Those are the people who also feed the political class and muddy the water in such a way that your people have desires, then they want to have people who are their thugs, who create all this violence, and all of that is making us worry about what kind of democracy are we looking for. So when we now eventually can understand what we want, and we need it as a national understanding, then in that case, then we now begin to talk about the kind of democracy we want to practice in Nigeria. And when that begins to happen, then, like you ask, I can now begin to have hope. For now, we are not even out of the military in our experience. And look at when we now have this argument about military involvement in election collation and all of that. Why should we be having that problem now? Why should it happen? So is that what we expect to have? The Constitution, the Electoral Act, everything is very specific about the role of the police and the role of the military, especially when it comes to election issues. But when we now have them here, we are just having an elongation of military rule. And that is not enabling us to come into a quality democracy that I'm sure all of us are wanting to have. And so when he asked me whether I have hope, it's a fallen hope for now.
Mr. Tony Abolo, well, thank you very much. Blessing of God. He is talking about the hangover effect of
the military.
prolonged military rule, and the fact that the military, in a sense, the residue of their rule continues to project into our political class and political activities. I'm sure you have a follow-up. Yes.
Yeah, well, we'll get back to him, like you already pointed out. Professor Sabegu, let's get back to some nitty-gritties on what exactly the political class is supposed to be giving the people. For observers of different political activities that's on the country, let's take this issue from president of the NLC. There's a quote from him sometimes last year at one of the May Day rallies. Meetings. The truth remains that this democracy has served the political class and not the average Nigerian. To him, this makes mockery of the very essence of democracy, which is service to the people and for the benefit of the common good. Now, if we're trying to this service is to the people, like every one of you have pointed out, but then direction seems to go the other way just to serve some selfish interests. How do we begin to tidy up on the knots of what should be, even as we're moving forward in our practice? Yes, there's just 20 years, especially from 1999 till date. How do we begin to tie up the loose knots around?
Yeah, thank you. Let me make two comments, and I'll quickly address the point you are making. I think all the talk about the military, I think it's overflogged. In my opinion, there are parts of this country, if you do not have the military present to check bandits, and I'm talking from the experience of Nigeria, you can't even conduct election. So I think we should be very careful about the level, of military involvement. There are places where, without the presence of the military, you can't even have a secure environment for people to come out and vote.
That is why. That is the why. Which is part of the issue you are addressing.
It is because you have conditions that are not necessarily generated by election or politics. You have existing conditions of banditry, of communities being invaded and displaced, and people dislocated on a massive basis. That has nothing to do with election. But once election comes, you require the military to be there to give people the security to vote. The second point is that we have moved away from what used to be in the Second Republic, when we used to say that there were two political parties, the military and the civilian. I think we have long sense of stability, that the fear of the military coming back, I don't think is immediate today. And the third point is that our elections have improved. In other words, people are not just merely voting, they are also choosing. A few years ago, people said the fear was that we were voting without choosing. Now we are voting and we are choosing. So because we are making this progress, what do we do to project into the future?
No, Professor Sabego, before you get on that, take into consideration what Senator Sabe Abdullahi said. Look, let's not generalize. Yeah. There are specific areas where voting was disrupted and choosing was also disrupted.
Yeah, but you see, we are discussing a situation in which people were trying to disrupt voting. There's also opposition to that trend, and that is the cause of the stalemate. And that's why you are doing a rerun of supplementary election. In 2007, that didn't happen, So we are making progress. That's the point I'm making, So my point really is that what does a class do when it is in power?
Yes.
It reproduces itself, and it reproduces society. And how do you reproduce that class, and how do you reproduce society? It is by doing governance. It is by doing governance. It is by advancing political accountability. You see, because democracy is not the fun of coming out every 4 years to vote. It is not the whole theater of mobilizing voters. In the end, the state or the government should put bread and butter on the table of the people to overcome hunger, poverty, and want. Any political class that is not able to do that is not building its long-term interests. And that is why I always argue that the Nigerian political class or elite is actually a homicidal ruling class, because they don't even think about their future. And more often than not, They don't even consider Nigeria as home. If you consider Nigeria as home, you will invest in the people and invest in society. Reproduce yourself as a class and reproduce society in general. So we need to think seriously about political accountability. We need to think seriously about what happens in between elections. We all tune off once elections are over. Communities don't insist on accountability. We need to think in terms of creating opportunities and platforms for people to demand from their representatives, what have you done in terms of what you told us? So I think this is where we should be going, so that we can close that gap.
All right, Professor Samego, thank you very much. And gentlemen, we're taking a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll continue with the conversation.
I was a little girl. I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir.
And your shirts are always so white.
I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results.
Shh, it's our little secret.
It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. Not be only to connect lights. Come do on yourself now. Now wow. Oh boy, come down now. Oga Kasali electrician who will they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from off.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back. And it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, we have a number of reactions from our viewers who have taken advantage of our Twitter handle. You can see that on your screen, bottom left-hand corner, which is at NTA GML. Let's take those tweets now. Blessing. Igbatigbe Zekeri tweets, not until we start conducting elections that are devoid of killing, buying and selling of votes, abduction of INEC staff, burning of INEC offices, and other anomalies in our polity, Nigeria's political class constitutes a great threat to our democracy. It must be checked.
Festus Akimboyo tweets, I have no admiration for our political class because too many of our politicians lack tolerance and decency. There's no way our democracy can flourish when politicians make our elections a do-or-die affair. I can only pray that our political system will not collapse.
Now, Akeju Olagbaju tweet says, now to assess the conduct of the political class, we must look at electoral structures that were put before and during the elections. And to a large extent, the skirmishes and electoral malfeasance that were witnessed can largely be attributed to the umpire and the players.
Well, from Ogbedi Zah is this tweet. The conduct has been less encouraging to answer the question straight up. However, it's relatively better when juxtaposed with that of 2003, 2007, and 2011, where elections were turned to do-or-die affair.
All right, 2011, the violence was after the election, yes, and it was also localized. Festus Akimboyewa has another tweet, and this time from a different perspective. He said, there's no way we can have a working and flourishing democracy we can be proud of when our political leaders cannot even control their own parties. It's time for tolerance and civilized political discourse. We are tired of seeing thugs, violence, and death in our election.
From Hamid Abdurrahman, the political class is responsible for political chaos and disturbances due to their influential nature. But the political class need to realize that there is no place if their constituents or state is not in order. With elections won at gunpoint, INEC staff harassed by thugs, electorate celebrated money bags as a result of hunger, and some security agencies were bought over by politicians, which eventually facilitated rigging. Some of us will say no thanks to parties that participated.
And Sani Michael Amakoje has this tweet. Now, it's interesting that Professor Sam Ego is suggesting proportional representation. However, in this modern era, I'm of the opinion that our system should be designed in such a way that people can vote with not just card reader, but with ATM, POS, and other related devices. Now, let's clarify this. What Professor Sam Ego was talking about is the electoral system, not the voting method. And what we have now is described generally as first past the post. Proportional representation is different. It has to do with, maybe, of course, we'll have the opportunity of coming back to him to grind into some of the characteristics of proportional representation, not whether you use your POS or ATM to vote. Listen.
This tweet is from Abdul Jibril, 74. Said political offices in Nigeria are very juicy and too attractive. And as a result of this, our politicians go there to accumulate wealth rather than serve the public. So he's proposing hashtag, so let's make political offices less attractive, and it will help us get good and selfless leaders.
Now, MK Ibrahim tweets, the political contest in Nigeria will continue to be war for as long as winning an election guarantees so much financial returns that are not available in any other endeavor in Nigeria. Now, Blessing, that's the point that you read earlier from the last tweet from Aminu Jibrin.
Yes.
And my question is going to Professor Kabir Mato. You saw him in the middle of the screen a moment ago. Professor Kabir Mato, well, lawmakers in our midst have talked about the need to hark back to what we saw during the Babangida years of MAMSA, which later, of course, became the National Orientation Agency, seeking to educate the populace about politics and so on and so forth. But if you listen to this tweet, and I'm sure it's a point that you have also apprehended yourself, politics is becoming perhaps the most viable enterprise, if not industry, in our system. And some persons would argue that the failure of the political class to efficiently manage the political economy is also responsible for the kind of demands that constituents make on lawmakers. That, look, you win an election, and in some cases, persons who were nobodies yesterday, within a short while, are flaunting wealth beyond the imagination of anyone. Is our political system too lucrative? And what demand does that also make on the political class to ensure that they re-engineer the political economy where people are, of course, gainfully employed and life is less hard for them, while, of course, they are having a banquet virtually every day in the political class?
Theoretically, no, but practically, yes. You recall that both Senator Sabi and Honorable Nandas did raise a fundamental issue about, the pervasiveness of the electorate itself. The political class here is comprised of two major divisions: the upper class, which Namdas and Senator Sabi represent, and the lower class, which of course are the voters that are asking for too much. Agreed. The Nigerian political system has been so corrupted to the extent that it's a matter of securing political office for you to automatically shift from a position of penury to a position of affluence. And this perhaps explains why the voter, the common man in the society, will continue to ask for money instead of service, from those that are representing them. But I think this has its roots from the very failure of the executive system, state system over a long period of time. The failure of local government, state governments, and federal government to provide the basic social infrastructure in the society, creates a huge vacuum that virtually everything that facilitates good life is absent or is lacking in virtually all our societies, especially in the countryside. Now, the moment we returned to civil rule in 1999 and then the institution of parliament came on board, the local man, the local woman in our respective communities never saw the parliamentarian as somebody who is just going to Kaduna or going to Abuja in order to make laws, to make good laws so that the executive can, effectively function and provide this basic infrastructure. Reasons are many, but one fundamental fact is that the status of these representatives automatically changed. Probably he didn't have a car, she didn't have a car, or she had a jalopy, and all of a sudden she was coming to the village, with an SUV. Now, this is a matter of reality, and so the populace or the voter became so apprehensive that immediately he sees his representative, what he's interested in, that he is going to get married, he has lost somebody, he is going on funeral, and so, so many unwanted and unexpected demand to the extent, and on the part of the legislature, they took up to themselves the idea of building classrooms as community service, culverts, etc., etc. All these are not functions that are assigned to the legislator. They are functions that the executive ordinarily should carry out. But because of their absence and their death in our society, the parliamentarians took to that also. And another very terrible scenario is if you see the heated crisis that has happened between the legislature and the executive from 1999 up till this moment was basically on the frontier of allocation of resources. What does the Senate make? What does the House of Representatives make? What does the National Assembly take as part of its budget? What does it take the executive to have a bill pass through, the two chambers of the National Assembly without any, thing filtering out? This basically, speaks volume about the crisis. And of course, we are coming from a scenario where when a parliamentarian, whether in the Senate or House of Representatives, goes on oversight in any ministry or agency of government, the concept of oversight, which is a fundamental function of the legislature, has been so badly corrupted that oversight means going there to simply collect something and go back to the chambers without necessarily carrying out any serious examination on this. Now, so these are the sort of things that, in my view, have successfully contributed in this inordinate demands that voters make, as far as their representatives in various chambers of the assembly, or even in state assembly is concerned. Not even that. At local government level, you see, so many people who are having nothing going, becoming councillors, and then within a year or two, they own the best houses, they drive the, best cars in their respect. These are the definition. These are the situations that commoners will see on the street and begin to interpret as, shifting alliance, and therefore also determining what their expectations are as far as their representatives at the various level of government is concerned. So I think it's really true. Nigerian political system is so expensive, not expensive in the sense that, yes, governance everywhere in the world, running government is not, a cheap enterprise. It's a very, very, but the expense is actually determined on where and how these resources are properly allocated, and not just how these resources are siphoned by few people that find themselves in positions of authority. And we need to change that. I don't know how we can make governance or aspirations to political positions less attractive so that we reduce this heat, so that people will not think that the moment you are elected into any particular position and therefore your bread is buttered and then you cut off from poverty. That's not necessarily it. We've seen several politicians that were there in the National Assembly or in the State Assembly 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, and today will be begging for a church card. So it's not necessarily a function of that. And I think really this is one area that Nigerians have to pay attention on in order for us to be able to chart a straight course, a better course, so there will be a greater understanding between the representatives and the people that they are representing.
Thank you very much, Professor Mato. Let's quickly get back to Benin, where Mr. Abolo is. And for us to keep up this national consciousness, like you've already pointed out, you listen to some of the tweets we read out talking about making political offices or the space less attractive. What, in your own estimation, should we be doing differently to actually make sure that ours is a less expensive kind of a democracy from what we're seeing, and also the way forward to preserve this democratic practice of us? That's the last frame from a frozen picture there. Okay, back to us. Professor Samego, you might as well take up that. Some of the areas of the tweets interest, issue of making it less lucrative for political gladiators. And also, to get back to the society, this same society is throwing up this set of political gladiators. So how do we begin to make sure what we have is something that we can actually contain, and at the same time build the nation in the direction that we should go?
I have just only one point to make, and that is that we need to reverse the idea that Nigeria is a consequence-free society, that you can do everything and go away scot-free. I think this is something we need to reverse. And we don't need to do that with the political class alone. We need to do that with those who take the laws into their hands at different levels. But to start with the political class, I think we need to be very careful in terms of, our policing the excesses of people in power and bringing them to book. I know that 2 governors have been jailed, and the message that are sent, is a very strong one to the whole society. I think we must continue to do fairness, ensure that regardless of the political party you belong, once you commit infractions against society, you should be properly labeled, documented, investigated, and prosecuted. And once we do that, it will send warning signal to others. And of course, we are discussing violence everywhere. If people who perpetrated violence and killing today are walking free tomorrow, you are encouraging people in the next election. So again, our capacity to bring these people to judgment must be increased and get punished so that others can learn from that. Once we do that, we are likely going to create an environment that will make democracy work.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Okay, we'll return to Benin. We've established contacts with Mr. Bolo now. I asked a question, looking at the national consciousness that will hope to at least uphold the political class, the environment, we need to do something different. And what should that be, in your own estimation, based on what we've all talked about?
Well, luckily for us, there is the National Orientation Agency. And I like to believe, like the old MAMSA, that they should be creating a lot of political education, political awareness across the board. Both, like my friend did, analyze the upper class of the political group and the lower class, which is the voters. Let everybody be enlightened in terms of responsibility and obligation. And until the people themselves demand that these kind of over-expenditure or over-bloated expenses and recurrent expenses we see in the budget that goes to the upper class is dispersed in such a way that it benefits the entire society, we're not likely to get good governance. So until the people themselves shout, because you don't expect those who are benefiting from the system to self-immolate. And therefore, it is we, the people, who must keep the shouting and the conversation on until the right thing is done. Maybe the Revenue, Fiscal and Mobilization Commission will have to look into this. And one of those things some of us had hoped was that with the presence of President Buhari, that there will be some kind of, call it open eye to everybody and get the political class to behave. And I like to believe that this time around, that we will get that kind of authoritative decision and communication right through the political class so that we get less expenditure within the upper class. Then we will now be able to have the money to run this country. Because for too long, if you look at the percentages don't look too good. So much is spent on recurring, then a lot of it goes into debt repayment, then very little is left for capital expenditure. And then we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about development, we're talking about service delivery. And as long as we're not giving service, then it factors into why people demand money and vote buying and all of that, all those negative tendencies that we're seeing in practice in the polity will continue to be. So I like to believe that the people themselves must help to enlighten themselves about their sense of obligation and what they should do about the system, and hoping that those who claim the upper class of leadership will also behave themselves and think of the people. The leaders don't seem to think of the people in a way you expect compassion and empathy to come from the upper class. When that begins to happen, we will notice it, we will see it. There'll be fairness, there'll be equity. These things are not just theoretic concepts. They are real, valid, and valuable in our community. And we're not getting that for now. But the people themselves must do the shouting.
Mr. Tony Abolo, thank you very much. One of the points you just made now has to do with the fact that we are not getting empathy from the political class, particularly if you were to use the loose classification of the upper and the lower class. And some persons would argue that sometimes the level of ostentation, and if you like, obscene display of wealth, sudden wealth displayed by the upper crust of the political class is offensive to the lower class, which brings us to the point made by Professor Sam Ego, that Nigeria's political class would appear to be a homicidal class that doesn't think of its future. And hence, you're having, a welter of negative reactions from different parts of the country. He also said something, and that's why my question is going to Senator Sabi Abdullahi, that a class must be capable of reproducing itself and also reproducing society. Is it possible that out of the crucible of the menacing incidents that we saw in some parts of the country of the 2019 general elections, together with the fact that this is the 20th anniversary of the Fourth Republic, that Nigeria's political class can take a breath and say, okay, we'll be in a position now to reproduce ourselves and also reproduce society?
Well, I think I agree with that very, lucid description of what the political class look like. In the sense that, of course, one thing with politics is if you are serving the people and you are close to them, when the time comes for election, you are bound to get reciprocation. And I think in my own case, I saw that practically, that yes, you worked, people now saw that, oh, at this particular time, the comparison now is not the question of the money, but the question of what has he done for us. And I think within that context, it becomes much more easier for you to, canvass for support from them. And so within this context, I personally, we want to see a system where political class or those who are going to contest should be assessed, not within the context of just that time frame of politicking, where some people decide to go and open the vault, but the assessment should be within the context of what have you been doing to service community. It is when your past has shown that the empathy the gentleman from, yes, is talking about will now be defined, because we are not dropping from the sky. We have been and will continue to be part of society. And so if society can take a look and say, look, let's look at these gentlemen. They are all our children. What has this person done? If he was a businessman, what has he been doing to help our community? If he has been in public service, what has he done to help our community? In whatever, endeavor of human activity you have involved yourself, there are opportunities where you are able to serve. And I think within that context, if we can begin to put in place an assessment method where when politicians say, oh, I want to come out and, participate, people have already assessed him on the basis of certain time series events rather than the one-off event that we always witness. As long as somebody who can come in today, knock somebody who has been with the community, who has been serving the community, knocking off because of money, then the scenario we have painted will continue to just be the reality.
Honorable Namdas, can the political class reinvent itself and thereby also reinvent the Nigerian society?
Yes, I think let me bring something fresh. We can't be able to reproduce ourselves, but I think that is when the political parties get it right. The major problem of the Nigerian politician is even the political parties. One, we have passed the Not Too Young to Run bill to open the space for younger people to join politics. But when it is election period, you find political parties selling forms, so the cost becoming unbearable. For even the young man who has the zeal to give the service cannot even afford to buy the form in the first place. So this is a very dangerous trend. Two, we have political parties having delegates who are going to, at the end, choose the leaders. And you find politicians working hard to ensure that they control the structure of these political parties and these in each of their states. And in doing so, when they're choosing the election, you find party executives collecting so much money from politicians to produce a leader. If we have political party leaders at each state level, at a structure that will come naturally, people with good intentions, leaders will be produced at that level without anything. But in as much as the party structure, the politicians will hijack and buy their way to get their tickets, or you find political parties giving automatic tickets against competence, we will continue to have issues.
All right. Well, it's on that note. This is an ending conversation, and hopefully we'll return to it on Good Morning Nigeria. It's on that note, we'd like to thank all our guests who've been with us on this conversation this morning. From Kaduna, we're joined by Professor Mato. Professor Mato, of course, is a regular guest. He's a professor of political science. So you can see him there in the middle of the screen. Professor Mato, thank you very much. And on the right side, extreme right from our Benin Network Center, veteran journalist and public affairs analyst, Mr. Tony Abolo. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. And right here in our studios, we would like to appreciate Professor Sam Ego, who's a professor of political science. Professor Sam Ego, thanks a lot for your insight always. And right here in the studios, appreciation to Honorable Abdul Razak Namdas, who is chairman of the House Committee on Media and Publicity. Thank you. Also, appreciation to Senator Sabi Abdullahi, as chairman, Senate Committee on Media and Publicity. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Of course, that does it for us today. Just to indicate, of course, that Dominic Thiem defeated Roger Federer at Indian Wells by 2-1. He dropped the first set 6-3, of course, took the second set 6-3, and then the last 7-5. So that's Dominic Thiem overcoming Roger Federer at Indian Wells in California.
Thank you very much, Kingsley. Really
all right, so it's on that note, of course, we call it a day on Good Morning Nigeria. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
I'm Blessing Abu. Thank you for watching. The program returns tomorrow, 7 in the morning.